This is the Guns Magazine podcast, episode number 93. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting people who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. Before we get started, let's talk about our great sponsors. 1791 Gunleather is the presenting sponsor of the Guns Magazine podcast, and they'd like you to know their appreciation for the Second Amendment fuels their passion for gun leather and its representation of the original patriots of this great nation. 100% Certified American Steerhide joins 4 generations of professional leather artisans to create the perfect firearms holster. Carry your firearm with the pride knowing that each 1791 gun leather holster is handcrafted to be the best holster for your firearm. See their full product lineup at 1791gunleather.com. The supporting sponsor of the Guns Magazine podcast is Hodgdon Powder. Available in granular powder and pellets, Hodgdon's family of 777 powders gives muzzleloading enthusiasts a quick cleaning, low-odor black powder substitute for rifle and pistol applications. To learn more, visit Hodgdon.com. Today, I'm talking with Buddy DuVall, the Chief Marketing Officer of USA Shooting. USA Shooting is the governing body and developmental organization for Olympic shooting sports in the U.S., and if you watched the recent Tokyo Olympics, you saw firsthand the end results of what they do. Now here's my talk with Buddy DuVall of USA Shooting. Hey, Buddy, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of... Well, I suppose your schedule is probably a little bit better now since we're right after the Olympics, and that's pretty much what you guys do.
Well, I'd like to think things have slowed down, but with all the tremendous success that our athletes had in Tokyo, it has been nonstop, but an exciting time for USA Shooting, especially with our athletes coming home from the games with 6 medals, which was our highest medal count since 2008. So we're riding this wave of momentum and excitement.
Excellent, and that's why we're talking. You are the Chief Marketing Officer of USA Shooting, and USA Shooting is essentially the governing body of the sport of shooting for the Olympics. So all those athletes that folks saw competing in Japan, you guys are the ones that kind of organize them and sanction them and all that. So as you said, we did pretty darn good. And even better in my book is everybody represented our country very, very well. And we thought this might be a good time to talk about what has been, and we will talk about the future. So let's jump right back into that. Kind of give us the overview of how American athletes did in shooting in Japan.
Well, we did great. In terms of medals, we ended up with 6 medals. We had 3 gold medals. We had 2 silver and 1 bronze. And just to recap that, we had Vincent Hancock winning men's skeet, and this was actually his 3rd Olympic gold medal. One of our 4 veterans on the team that had actually been to the Olympics before, and our only medalist or returning medalist to go and compete in Tokyo. And then first-time Olympian Amber English won the gold medal in women's skeet, so it was nice to have the double there for men and for women. And then our 3rd gold medal was Will Shaner in the men's air rifle event. And then for our silver medalist, we had Kaylee Browning, who won a medal in women's trap. She was also a first-time Olympian. And then we had 2 new mixed team events that were added to the Olympic program when a couple of other shooting events were dropped. And in the men and women's mixed air rifle event, we had Lucas Kaczynski and Mary Tucker winning a silver medal. And then in the mixed team event for trap, we had Maddie Bernal and Brian Burrows win the bronze medal. So that's a recap of the medals that we had in Tokyo. I will point out that it was not just the medals. We had some fantastic results with a number of our shooters just missing the finals by a point or two or a target. So that was really encouraging. Great performances. And then we had a number of athletes make the finals, but come up short in the final rounds. But again, great finishes. We had one fifth place finish, one sixth place finish in rifle, and also 13th place and 10th place in a couple of other events. So they're right there on the edge of making the final.
Well, I'd like to think that the United States is, head and shoulders above anybody else in the shooting world. How do we stack up against other countries in terms of medal counts?
Well, in this Olympics, the Chinese did win more medals than us. They had 4 gold medals and ended up with 13 medals overall. And then the Russians had 8 medals. So we're right there in the mix. A lot of people think that the United States wins the most medals in shooting, but the Chinese really have outpaced us for the past 20 or 30 years in the shooting events, although U.S. shooters have won the most Olympic medals of all time, dating back to 1896. So, we're really pleased with our results, but obviously there is a lot of international competition out there. And, the Chinese are always in our sights trying to match what they do and hopefully overtake them in the medal count as we go forward.
Absolutely. So what do you attribute that to? Because, we all think of the United States as a country with a deep and long-standing tradition of shooting, and you've got a country that, unless you're officially sanctioned by the government, you can't even, lay hands on a weapon, and yet they do well. Is it about resources, or how is it that they're doing so well?
Well, there's a number of factors, but one of the biggest factors is that the Chinese government supports their Olympic sports. Mm-hmm. Here in the United States, all of our funding is really corporate and individual contributions. So none of the sports or the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee receive any government funding. So it really is America's team. So that is one factor. If you look at the number of medals that USA Shooting won in this Olympics, we had the highest medal to program dollars spent ratio of any sport. So we're very efficient in what we are able to accomplish. But the fact of the matter is we need more resources and funding to better support our development programs. So that's something that's really key in the job that I'm doing. And then one of the other factors is just participation. We've got a lot of people in this country that own guns, that shoot guns recreationally, that shoot different types of competitions. You've got American skeet, American trap, sporting clays, action pistols. So we've got a lot of shooters that shoot. But when it comes to the international or Olympic disciplines, the numbers are really small by comparison. So one of our goals is to get more people interested and involved in the Olympic shooting sports because, we do have this great American history and tradition of gun ownership and shooting. We just need to direct those people to our programs.
Absolutely. And, before we get away from the Olympics, it's been an interesting time, to say the least. First of all, the Olympics were postponed a year, so it's been 5 years since the previous. But this Olympic Games in America has had a significant drop-off in viewership, 50% it looks like. And a lot of folks, there's a lot of reasons, but I truly, from where I sit, I think a lot of it, based on feedback I've got, is folks are really tired of athletes putting their political views in front of the sport itself, which is supposed to be a unifying type of activity. But I wanted to point out that the shooting team, all of our medalists, everybody represented the country well. They were proud to be Americans on a world stage, and that doesn't surprise me. But I was very proud of our athletes in the shooting sports.
Well, I completely agree with you. I couldn't be more proud of how our athletes not only performed during the competitions, but how they represented themselves and our country and the shooting sports. from my perspective, I think shooting had the most positive media that we've ever had during the Olympics. And I think a lot of that was because of our athletes really representing themselves well. We had Today Show appearances 4 straight days with our Olympic medalists. So,
wow,
performing well and getting recognized for it. And you mentioned some of the things that are going on in other sports that may have turned some people off. Fortunately, we didn't have that within our sport, and we received a lot of positive comments from people, our fans and supporters, that they were very proud as well of how our athletes represented. So I think that was a very positive thing for our organization and the shooting sports in general. And then as far as the viewership, I know that the ratings were down. The number of people watching was lower than the 2016 Olympic Games. I think part of that may have been because of the time change.
Mm-hmm.
Also, people are going online. More of the sports were accessible through online broadcast, either live or tape delay. So I think that probably impacted the viewership just a bit.
Yeah. Well, let's step away from the previous Olympics and let's talk about USA Shooting itself. Now, I got to admit, your organization, for all the great work you do and the importance of that work, you're not necessarily the organization that comes to mind whenever you think of shooting sports. So talk about the history of the USAS and basically your place in the world of shooting sports.
Well, USA Shooting is the national governing body for not only Olympic shooting sports, but also Paralympic shooting sports. So we are responsible for raising money and funding and training our athletes on a year-round basis. So there's, of course, the Olympics, which is what most people see in the media, but there's World Championships, the Pan American Games, Championships of the Americas, in addition to at least 4 World Cups every year for each discipline. So there's a lot that goes on that may not be on the radar, but it's the qualification process that leads up to the Olympics. And we have to fund these athletes, get them prepared, and then ultimately we select the Olympic team and turn that Olympic team over, in a sense, to the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee for them to take to the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games. And
it's something that I keep wanting to hit on throughout this episode is the fact that you folks are completely self-funded. You don't get any tax dollars. It's all corporate sponsorships and then the athletes themselves and their families stepping up to support what you do.
Well, that's correct. As I mentioned, we get some funding from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and they also provide some direct athlete support. But the majority of our funding comes through our, believe it or not, our direct mail program. We have about 33,000 unique donors that have provided funding over the past 12 months. In addition to that, we do get some revenue from corporate sponsors. As you would imagine, we shoot a lot of ammunition. So we have great partners like Federal that provide our shot shells for our trap and skeet teams. And then on the small bore side for 22 rifle and pistol, we have a sponsor called Ely that provides us with 22 ammunition that we need. So that's just an example of some of the partnerships that we have that help fund and support our athletes. So, our goal is to raise more money, and we believe that there's opportunities with this large shooting, outdoor hunting industry that we have. And also people that are interested in shooting sports, such as the direct mail donors, in supporting our efforts.
So when a person gets involved in one of the, I believe there's 15 different sports or competitions under your umbrella, somebody's, say, involved in small bore rifle, how do they end up working with you guys? I mean, it's Joe or Susie at the local small bore matches, and they're starting to win, and they're starting to really show that they've got above average skill. How do they go from that place to now at some point working with you folks and hopefully eventually qualifying for the Olympics?
Well, we do have 15 Olympic events, as you mentioned, and that's divided between shotgun, rifle, and pistol. And there's different development programs and tracks essentially for each of those sports. I'll take shotgun, for instance. There's a Scholastic Clay Target program that has thousands of youth shooters participating, and they shoot American style skeet and trap, sporting clays. But that organization also offers international trap and skeet. And through those programs, those athletes have an opportunity to shoot the International Olympic game and then ultimately can qualify for our Junior Olympic Championships, make the development team, and then participate in our national championships. So there's this progression from development type programs into advanced programs like the Junior Olympics, and then a pathway to the national team and ultimately the Olympic team.
And you guys have a physical facility with ranges and all that in Colorado Springs. Talk a little bit about that.
So we're headquartered in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center. We have an indoor rifle and pistol range where we can shoot 25 meter, 50 meter, and 10 meter events all at the same time. We have an outdoor shotgun range that's located at Fort Carson, a couple of miles away. So the majority of our training is headquartered here in Colorado Springs, but we also have facilities around the country in our certified training centers and other ranges where athletes can train and also compete. We do have a close affiliation with the Army Marksmanship Training Unit down at Fort Benning, Georgia. And they have an outdoor facility where we can hold our 50-meter outdoor rifle and pistol competitions. And they also have air gun ranges as well. So we have a number of places that complement the facility here in Colorado Springs, but this is our headquarters.
I got to ask, this shows my ignorance of the overall program. Is there age limits or brackets in what you do? Because typically it's younger people. You don't see a lot of old white guys like me competing in the Olympics and shooting sports. Is that just because younger people have better reflexes and athletic ability, or is there actually age limits?
Well, there are not age limits, and we typically have quite a range of athletes from 16 years old on the low end, even to athletes in their 50s making the teams. But I think, this past Olympics was a great example of our team getting younger. We do have, as I mentioned, 3-time Olympian Vincent Hancock leading our men's skeet team, who's been to the games, but we only had 3 other athletes that had even been to an Olympics. And we had 3 athletes that would be considered juniors, so 20 years of age or younger, that competed. So the age of our team is coming down, and I think that's really an example of how these development programs are working, where I'll say the kids are getting started at a younger age. They're getting to a world-class level while they're still technically a junior shooter in the junior category, and able to go out there and compete and not only make the Olympic team, but go in and do quite well.
So talk a little bit about the Paralympic side of what's going on. There's a lot of really cool stories and a lot of people that are getting to compete that many years ago that wouldn't have happened.
So the Paralympic Games follows the Olympic Games with about a 3-week break. And our athletes will be leaving at the end of this month to go over to Tokyo. We have 6 athletes that have qualified in rifle and pistol events. We do hope to get para-trap involved in the Paralympic Games later this year. We're sending a team to Lonato, Italy for a world championship. And so hopefully once that happens, we'll have the 3 disciplines represented: rifle, pistol, and shotgun. But they'll go and shoot some very similar events: air rifle, sport pistol, rapid fire pistol, so on and so forth. So they'll compete on the same ranges where the Olympics were held. The events are very similar, same types of guns, ammunition. Some of the events are tweaked just a little bit based on how the athletes are categorized and entered into the competition.
So we've talked about the fact that China is doing better than us right now in the medal count and all that. What does the future hold? There's a pretty strong anti-firearm sentiment in our country. Do you think that's going to be affecting participation numbers going forward, or do you think there's still a lot of kids coming up in the ranks that still love guns and everything about the world of shooting?
We see our participation actually increasing, and it's interesting because when we do have positive results like we had in the Olympics and people see that shooting is an Olympic sport, we have a lot of youth shooters out there, or even people that haven't even considered shooting before want to get involved. So we're seeing the numbers grow. I fully anticipate that this trend will continue, and I believe more people are getting oriented towards some of the competitive shooting sports like international and Olympic style shooting. So I really don't think we're going to have a negative impact. I think it's really going to be a positive one.
Excellent. We always like to hear the future is bright, because sometimes, especially if you look in the mass media, it may not seem that way, or they certainly don't want it to be that way. So you talked about something earlier, that the Olympics were postponed a year because of COVID. Did that affect what you guys were doing on your side of things? I'm sure it did, that you had an extra year to prepare and you've got a year less to get ready for the next Olympics.
Well, the postponement did present some challenges for us, but also some opportunities. As I've mentioned, we had a young team. It gave the majority of the athletes an extra year to prepare. I say the majority of athletes. About 80% of our team was selected a year ago. We had the 50-meter small bore rifle events that were completed in May of this year. So those athletes really only had a month or two to prepare, knowing that they were on the team. So I think the extra year was good in a number of ways, giving our athletes a chance to wrap their head around being on the team and really training hard. And some of the challenges that we faced were just the lack of international competitions. So our coaching staff was very creative and putting together virtual matches for rifle and pistol, where our targets are scored electronically. We were able to shoot virtually with countries like France and Hungary. Even our athletes in the United States competed against each other in different states using AV equipment, and then having the scoring systems tied together electronically, so it was all done real time. So I think for the most part, we did a really good job of being creative and figuring out a way to overcome some of the challenges of having or not having our athletes be able to travel, and figure out a way to keep the competition level high.
Well, that's fascinating about the electronic matches. I guess I've heard of them. It didn't really register with me. So is that the wave of the future, or you think it was just a stopgap for the current situation?
Well, our athletes in rifle and pistol have been shooting on electronic targets for a number of years. They still shoot pellets and bullets just like they normally would, but the scoring system is an electronic target, which gives you instant feedback on a screen rather than shooting a bullet through a piece of paper that has to be scored manually. So this has been done for a number of years, and it gives the spectators ability to see where everyone ranks real time. Competition happens. So essentially what we do is we tie these systems together electronically. So if a shooter is in Colorado Springs shooting against someone in France, it's like they're standing right next to each other. And then, of course, we've got television monitors where you have the audio visual feed. So the athletes are hearing the same type of commentary from the announcer and seeing the results in real time.
So do you think that's going to be more prevalent, or is it already reached a level of just that's how things are done?
Well, I think what has changed is that we will start holding these competitions against different countries where we're not in the same physical location. And keep in mind, this is just for the rifle and pistol events. For shotguns, a completely different animal because you're outside shooting, and the scoring is entered in manually, but then transmitted electronically. So for rifle and pistol events, I would imagine that we'll hold more of these training competitions virtually as we've done in the past, which really reduces the travel cost.
Yeah.
But as far as World Cup and other international competitions, those will all be held in person.
This is a question that there's probably a million different answers, but when you think back over your career of working with USA Shooting, is there one story in particular? It's that story that makes you go to the office in the morning and think, this is why I do this. A shooter overcoming adversity or being successful, or is there one in particular that comes to the front?
Well, really, there's so many stories. I would have to say it's really neat to see these athletes go and excel. And I will say that Amber English won the women's skeet gold medal. And I've known her since she was born. So I've known her for about 30 years. I was out at the shotgun range here in Colorado Springs on her second day of trying the skeet event, and
wow.
I've watched her progress over the years, and having known her family and her for a long time, that's a particularly rewarding experience to see her have this success in the Olympics. But I think it really highlights what it means to have the opportunity. There was a facility here, the Olympic Training Center, so there was a range where she could go and shoot, practice, train, get coaching. There was a support system. Obviously her parents were involved. They were competitive shooters. They provided the knowledge and the resources to help get her going. And of course, it's up to each individual athlete to have the drive and the interest to participate and keep training and keep pressing on year after year. And it's really just a great example of all those elements coming together. And I use that as a model. What if we had more training facilities around the country with more coaches, exposing more athletes to the sport? Just the more people you have involved, the more you raise your level of your country. And I think that's one example. But if you model that, there's a lot more opportunity for other people out there.
Yeah. Well, I think that leads into kind of my next question perfectly, which is, what does the future hold in terms of a perfect world? Let's say your budget magically doubled or tripled overnight. What would USA Shooting be if you didn't have to worry about money and resources? And what would the future bring?
Well, in a perfect world, we would have more international style ranges around the country. Hillsdale College is building a fabulous facility in Hillsdale, Michigan, and we've partnered with them. That's a great example. They've got a world-class shotgun facility with plans to build a rifle and a pistol range. If we could have 3 or 4 more of those facilities around the country, then that's going to provide more opportunities for training and competitions. Just to give you an example, our rifle and pistol national championships were scheduled for October at Fort Benning, Georgia. That competition was canceled because of the uptick in COVID right now. And that's the only outdoor range in the country where we can hold the national championships for rifle and pistol. Ah. So that's really one of the big challenges that we have is just facilities. Because if you don't have a facility, you can't have a program, and athletes can't train or compete. So if we had funding to build more facilities, that would be a great place to start. And then, of course, once the athletes are in the programs, we want to fund them to an adequate level so that they have the resources such as ammunition, travel budgets to compete in national competitions and also international competitions.
Well, and that leads right into that big question and kind of the overarching point of this entire episode, which is how can people support USA Shooting and the athletes and make sure the U.S. is the king of the hill of the next Olympic Games when it comes to medals?
Well, I'd love to see the American public get involved and support the team. My ultimate goal is to get 1 million people to make a donation. Just think, we had a million people donating $20, we'd have a $20 million budget.
Yeah.
We try to make this easy for people. We've got a new mobile platform where people can text to donate, and people can text "shoot for gold" to 41444. That's shoot the number 4 gold to the number 41444. It's that simple. They get a link to a landing page where they can make a contribution and make a one-time donation, or even do a recurring donation of, say, $20 a month if they want to support in that manner. So we're trying to get the word out to all of our fellow shooting enthusiasts, firearm owners in the United States that can play a role in supporting this team. And we'd love to have people support us by texting "shoot for gold" to the number 41444.
And you guys also have a great website. It's very comprehensive. That's usashooting.org.
That's correct. Donations can be made online at usashooting.org as well.
Perfect. And again, while we're talking about fundraising, does the bulk of your donations come in immediately following an Olympic game or right before the Olympic game, or does it spread out fairly well over the 4-year cycle?
We do see a lot of interest leading up to the Olympics. It's interesting because after the Olympics, it's really the best time for us to fundraise, especially when we come off with the results that we had in Tokyo. So we're trying to get out there in front of people and let them know, even though the Olympics is over, we've had great success. We're already into our training cycle for the next Olympics, which has actually been shortened to 3 years now. So now is a great time for us to capitalize on this momentum that we have, and hopefully inspire people to keep this momentum going.
Exactly. So spread the word. If you want to see the United States do even better in the upcoming Olympics in 3 years in Paris, we need to support them, because just like everything, they need money to do what they do. And sitting here looking at the website, you guys are not a huge organization. Sometimes people think of, especially the U.S. Olympic Committee, and, they've got a lot of folks doing all kinds of stuff. You guys aren't very big.
Well, we're not. We've got a staff of 11 people. 4 of those are our national team coaches for rifle, pistol, para, and shotgun. And we really lean heavily on our volunteers, our assistant coaches, and people that just want to help support the organization that are not full-time employees.
And that kind of goes to my point of an organization this size. Even if you just give them $20, it'll make a significant difference.
Well, that's absolutely correct. It's amazing. Our average donation through our direct mail program is about $35. And when we had 33,000 members donate, I think we generated $1.9 million. So those contributions in any size really do help. So it's a matter of the number of folks supporting the team, which really means a lot to us.
And that's the goal. And as I said before, they represented our country well. They represented shooting sports in the Second Amendment. Fantastic. And they are the future of shooting. So, Buddy DuVall, I appreciate you taking the time, and we will share all that information, how to support the team financially, in our show notes. And here at FMG Publications, which is our owners of American Handgunner, Guns Magazine, and AmericanCop.com, we are supporters and sponsors of USA Shooting, so we certainly want to do whatever we can do. So, buddy, we'll talk in the future and hopefully keep beating that drum that we need to be number one in the world of shooting.
I love it. Great to hear from you today, and enjoy the chat.
It was great talking to Buddy DuVall about USA Shooting, and I sincerely hope you'll take the time to donate to USA Shooting Sports by texting SHOOT4GOLD to 41444. Of course, we'll have that information and links in our show notes. And with that, we hope you're enjoying the Guns Magazine podcast. Guns Magazine was first in the business, and we're bringing you the most interesting chats in the gun world. If you've got any questions or comments about the show, please email me. That's editor@gunsmagazine.com. Make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast catcher, YouTube, and of course at gunsmagazine.com. And while you're online, don't forget to check out our great sister publications, American Handgunner Magazine at AmericanHandgunner.com and AmericanCop.com. We'd also appreciate it if you'd share a favorite episode or some kind words on your own social media. And don't forget to check out the presenting sponsor of the Guns Magazine podcast, 1791 Gunleather. Visit them at 1791gunleather.com. That's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast for the entire staff at FMG Publications. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.